Hello friends, welcome to Charm Stories. Please subscribe to this channel and share the stories to others. By the way, to enable subtitles or captions, look for the CC icon on the video player. It will be located in the top right corner if subtitles are available. Now let's dive into the story. In the heart of a small, dry village called Kijani, where the sun beat down on the cracked earth and the wind carried the scent of dust, lived a humble farmer named Mosi. The land was tough, just like the people, and Mosi worked every day from dawn to dusk tending his small patch of land. Life was hard, but Mosi was content with what he had. A modest home, a small farm, his loving wife, Zawadi, and their daughter, Amani, whose laughter lit up even the most difficult days. One particularly scorching afternoon, as Mosi worked in the fields, he noticed something unusual. Under the shade of a nearly lifeless tree at the edge of his land was a young boy, no older than 12, crouching and picking at the dry branches. His clothes were torn, his face covered in dust, and his body thin from hunger. Mosi's heart sank at the sight. He wiped his brow and walked slowly toward the boy, not wanting to startle him. "Are you okay, son?" Mosi asked in a gentle voice. The boy, startled, looked up with wide, scared eyes. His lips were dry, and he said nothing, only shaking his head in silence. "Come on," Mosi said, his voice soft with concern. "Let's get you something to eat." The boy hesitated, as if unsure whether to trust Mosi, but his hunger won. Slowly he followed Mosi to the small farmhouse. Inside, Zawadi was kneading dough for bread. She glanced at the boy and without a word, set another plate on the table. She filled a bowl with soup, and the boy ate quickly, as though he hadn't seen food in days. When the boy finished, Mosi sat across from him. "What's your name?" he asked. "Wangi," the boy whispered, his voice barely audible. "And where are your parents?" Wangi lowered his head. "I don't have any." Mosi exchanged a look with Zawadi. No child should have to fend for themselves like this. Mosi reached into his pocket and pulled out a small crumpled wad of bills, 25 shillings, all he had saved for seeds to plant the next season. He placed the money on the table in front of Mwangi. "Take this," Mosi said. "It's not much, but it should help you get to town. You can find someone there who might help." Mwangi stared at the money, his eyes wide with disbelief. "I can't take this," he whispered, shaking his head. "You can, and you will," Mosi replied firmly. "Just promise me you'll use it for something good." Mwangi's hands shook as he took the money, his eyes filling with tears. "I promise," he said, his voice quivering. "I'll pay you back someday. I'll come back, and I'll repay you for this." Mosi smiled and patted Mwangi's shoulder. "Don't worry about paying me back, just take care of yourself." Mwangi nodded and quietly left the house, clutching the money tightly. Mosi watched him walk down the dusty road, a mix of hope and sorrow filling his heart. He had done what he could, but the world was a harsh place for a child like Mwangi. Still, there was something in the boy's eyes, something that made Mosi believe that maybe, just maybe, Mwangi would be okay. That evening, as Mosi and Zawadi sat by the fire, Zawadi looked at her husband. "Do you think we'll ever see that boy again?" she asked. Mosi shrugged, staring into the flickering flames. "Maybe, but even if we don't, we did the right thing. The world needs more kindness." Zawadi smiled softly and rested her head on Mosi's shoulder. "You're a good man, Mosi." The days in Kijani went on as they always had. Weeks turned into months, and months into years. Mwangi faded from their thoughts, but not completely. Mosi continued working the land, and Zawadi managed the household. Their daughter, Amani, grew up with dreams bigger than the village could offer. She wanted to become a teacher, to help others just as her father had helped Mwangi. One evening, Amani sat at the dinner table, her face glowing with excitement. "Baba," she said, "I want to be a teacher. I want to make a difference." Mosi smiled, pride swelling in his chest. "That's a wonderful dream, Amani. Keep working hard and you'll make it happen." But soon after, Amani's health began to decline. At first, it was just fatigue and a cough, but her condition worsened. The local doctors couldn't determine what was wrong, but they knew one thing. Amani needed treatment, and it wasn't going to be cheap. Mosi and Zawadi were heartbroken. Their savings weren't enough, and Mosi felt powerless for the first time in his life. One afternoon, as Mosi worked the fields, he saw a cloud of dust rising in the distance. A sleek black SUV was approaching, an unusual sight in their remote village. The vehicle stopped in front of the farmhouse, and a tall, well-dressed man stepped out. Mosey shielded his eyes from the sun, his heart racing as the man approached. "Mr. Mosey?" the man called out, his voice confident. "That's me," Mosey replied, puzzled. The man smiled warmly. "It's been a long time." As the man drew closer, Mosey's eyes widened in recognition. "Mwangi?" he asked, hardly believing it. Mwangi, now a successful billionaire, nodded. "Yes, it's me. I never forgot the kindness you showed me." Mosey stood in stunned silence as Mwangi continued. "You saved my life that day. Now it's my turn to help you. I made a promise, and I intend to keep it." Tears welled up in Mosey's eyes. "You don't owe me anything, Mwangi. I did what anyone would have done." "No, you didn't," Mwangi said, his voice filled with gratitude. "You gave me hope when I had nothing. Now, let me help you and your family." Mwangi explained that he had built a successful business, and now he was wealthy beyond his wildest dreams. He had come back not only to repay Mosey, but to ensure that Amani received the treatment she needed. Mosey's heart swelled with gratitude as Mwangi handed him a check that would cover all of Amani's medical bills and more. "Your kindness changed my life, and now I want to change yours." As Mosey embraced Mwangi, the sun began to set over the fields. For the first time in years, hope filled the air. They sat on the porch, and Mwangi shared the story of his life after leaving Kijani. With the $25 Mosey had given him, he had bought a bus ticket to the city where he struggled to survive. But through hard work, determination, and the kindness of strangers, he built a business empire. Mwangi was no longer a poor boy. He was now a billionaire. "You gave me a chance, Mosey," Mwangi said, his voice thick with emotion. "Now, I want to give Amani the chance she needs." Mosey's heart ached as Mwangi mentioned Amani's illness. "She's not well," Mosey admitted. "We don't have the money for the treatment she needs." "That's why I'm here," Mwangi said, his voice steady with determination. "I'll cover all the costs. Doctors, hospitals, whatever it takes, Amani will get the best care." Mosey was overwhelmed. "I can't accept that, Mwangi. It's too much." Mwangi leaned forward, his gaze intense. "Mosey, you saved my life. Let me do the same for Amani." Zawadi, who had been listening quietly, placed her hand on Mosey's arm. "Maybe it's time to accept help," she said gently, "for Amani's sake." Mosey looked at his wife, then at Mwangi, and finally nodded. "All right," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "For Amani." The next morning, Mwangi arrived with all the arrangements in place. A car was ready to take Mosey, Zawadi, and Amani to the city for her treatment. As the sun rose over the fields of Kijani, there was a sense of hope in the air that hadn't been there in a long time. As they packed for the journey, Amani, though weak, tried to help. "You don't have to do anything, Amani," Zawadi said gently. "Just rest. Mwangi's going to make sure everything is taken care of." Amani smiled, grateful but tired. The illness had taken so much from her, but now, thanks to Mwangi, she had a chance. As they drove toward the city, Mosey looked out at the horizon, his heart filled with gratitude. The kindness he had shown all those years ago had returned to him, and it was more than he had ever imagined. Mwangi had kept his promise, and now there was hope. Real hope, that Amani would get better. And for the first time in a long while, Mosey allowed himself to believe that everything might just turn out all right. Mosey sat in the front passenger seat, his eyes gazing out at the passing fields of Kijani. His mind was heavy with thoughts of what lay ahead. Just a few days ago, he had feared the worst for his daughter Amani, convinced there was no way out of the situation. But now, thanks to Mwangi, there was a real chance that Amani might get better. The fear that had gripped his heart for so long was slowly being replaced by a cautious hope. In the back seat, Zawadi sat beside Amani, her hand resting gently on their daughter's knee. Her face was lined with worry, but like Mosey, she held on to hope, however small it seemed. They had been through so much, and though Zawadi didn't want to get her hopes up too high, the look of confidence on Mwangi's face as he drove made her think that maybe, just maybe, things were finally going to turn around. The city loomed ahead of them, its tall buildings and bustling streets a stark contrast to the peaceful life they had known in Kijani. For Amani, the sight was overwhelming. She hadn't left their small village in years, and the noise, the crowds, and the movement of the city made her feel anxious. But Mwangi, seated confidently behind the wheel, seemed completely at ease. "We're almost there," Mwangi said, glancing at them through the rearview mirror. "The hospital is just ahead. I've spoken to the doctors, they're ready for us." Amani felt a nervous flutter in her stomach. This was it. She was about to step into a world she didn't know, filled with doctors, tests, and treatments. It was terrifying, but she knew she had to be strong, not just for herself, but for her family. When they arrived at the hospital, Mwangi parked the car and came around to help Amani out. His hand was steady as he supported her, guiding her carefully through the entrance. The hospital was enormous, and the sterile scent of disinfectant filled the air. Amani's legs felt weak, but Mwangi was right there beside her, his calm presence easing her anxiety. A team of doctors and nurses greeted them, already familiar with Mwangi. He had made sure everything was in place. The efficiency with which they were brought in and settled was almost surprising to Mosi and Zawadi, who were used to the slow, relaxed pace of Kijani. Amani was taken away for initial tests, leaving her parents to wait with Mwangi. "This is more than we could have ever hoped for," Zawadi said softly, her eyes brimming with tears. "I don't know how we'll ever thank you, Mwangi." Mwangi shook his head, dismissing the idea of thanks. "There's no need to thank me. You and Mosi gave me a chance when I had nothing. I'm just returning the favor." Mosi, who had been silent for most of the trip, finally spoke up. "It's hard to believe," he said, his voice low and heavy with emotion. "We've been struggling for so long. I thought there wasn't any hope left for Amani." Mwangi leaned forward, his expression serious. "There's always hope, Mosi. That's something you taught me. When I was lost, you gave me hope. Now, it's my turn." Mosi met Mwangi's gaze and for the first time fully understood that this wasn't just about money or repaying a debt. It was about the bond that had formed years ago, a connection built on kindness and compassion. Mwangi wasn't helping out of obligation, he genuinely cared. Hours passed as Amani went through her tests. The waiting felt endless, and Mosi and Zawadi sat in tense silence, their hands clasped tightly together. Mwangi, though calm and quiet, was just as invested, his concern for Amani clear in his steady demeanor. Eventually a doctor emerged from the back, his expression neutral but with a slight smile. "How is she?" Mosi asked, his heart pounding. The doctor offered a reassuring nod. "She's stable. We've completed the initial tests, and while we'll need to do more, I'm optimistic. We're starting treatment right away." Zawadi let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding, and Mosi felt a sense of relief wash over him. It wasn't over yet, but it was a start. "Thank you," Mosi said, his voice thick with gratitude. The doctor nodded. "We're doing everything we can. She's in good hands." As they returned to the waiting room, Mwangi turned to Mosi and Zawadi. "This is just the beginning," he said quietly, "but we're in this together. Whatever happens, I'll be here." Mosi looked at Mwangi, deeply moved by his words. For the first time in a long while, hope didn't feel so far away. Over the next few weeks, Amani's treatments continued. Each day she seemed to regain a little more strength. Mosi, Zawadi, and Mwangi visited her regularly, sitting by her bedside, offering comfort and support. Though it was a slow and steady process, Amani's recovery was visible. The doctors remained cautiously optimistic, but they reminded the family that the road ahead would be long. One afternoon, as Amani rested in her hospital bed, Mwangi sat beside her, quietly flipping through a book. The room was peaceful, the only sound the soft hum of the machines monitoring Amani's vitals. Amani, her eyes half closed, turned to Mwangi. "You don't have to stay here all the time, you know," she said softly, her voice still weak but gaining strength. Mwangi looked up from the book, his eyes meeting hers. "I want to be here," he said simply. Amani smiled faintly. "You've done so much for me already. I don't know how I'll ever repay you." Mwangi shook his head. "You don't owe me anything. I'm not doing this for thanks. I'm doing it because I care about you." Amani's heart fluttered at his words. She hadn't expected this. A bond growing between them, deeper than gratitude. As she drifted off to sleep, she thought about Mwangi, his kindness, his support, and the way he made her feel safe. It was something she hadn't felt in a long time. As the weeks went by, Amani's condition continued to improve, and with it, her connection with Mwangi deepened. What began as an act of gratitude from Mwangi had grown into something more. Mosi and Zawadi noticed the subtle change between them, the shared looks, the quiet conversations. Mosi, Zawadi said one evening, have you noticed the way Mwangi looks at Amani? Mosi frowned, unsure of how to respond. I have, he admitted, but I'm not sure what to think of it. Zawadi smiled softly. Maybe it's something good, Mosi. Maybe it's something we didn't see coming. Mosi sighed. Perhaps. We'll just have to wait and see. As Amani's health improved, so did the bond between her and Mwangi. The love that was blossoming between them was undeniable, and though the journey had been difficult, there was finally light on the horizon. For Mosi and Zawadi, the most important thing was that their daughter was getting better, and with Mwangi by her side, they believed that brighter days were ahead. One quiet evening, as Mwangi sat by Amani's bedside, reading aloud from a book, she found herself watching him closely. His voice was soft, almost tender, as he read, and with each turn of the page, she felt a growing sense of safety in his presence. She couldn't help but feel comforted by his calm, his consistency, and how he had become her anchor in the storm of her illness. In that moment, Amani realized that her feelings for him had shifted into something deeper. Weeks had passed since Amani's treatment began, and while her recovery was slow, every day brought her a little closer to strength. But it wasn't just her physical health that was changing. As her body healed, her emotions became harder to ignore. She was no longer just grateful for Mwangi's help. Something much more profound had taken root in her heart. One afternoon, as Amani sat by the window of her hospital room, gazing out at the sun-dappled trees, Mwangi arrived with his usual smile. He brought a bouquet of fresh flowers, setting them down beside her. You didn't have to bring those, Amani said, though the gesture warmed her heart. I wanted to, Mwangi replied, his smile soft and genuine. How are you feeling today? Better, she said honestly, looking up at him with gratitude in her eyes. I feel stronger every day, thanks to you. Mwangi shook his head. You're the one doing the hard work. I'm just here to support you. Amani smiled, her heart fluttering. There was something in the way Mwangi looked at her, in the way his eyes lingered just a little longer than necessary, that made her wonder if he felt the same connection she did. As the day went on and the afternoon light dimmed, Amani found herself thinking about him more. Mwangi sat beside her, reading softly, but her thoughts drifted. She wasn't thinking about the story he was reading. She was thinking about him, about how his steady presence had become so important to her. Mwangi, Amani said softly, interrupting his reading. He looked up from the book, curiosity in his eyes. What is it? She hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to say what was on her mind. But she had to speak. The feelings inside her were too strong to ignore. I've been thinking a lot about everything. About you. Mwangi closed the book and placed it on the table, giving her his full attention. His expression softened, encouraging her to continue. You've done so much for me, she began, her heart pounding. More than I could have ever asked for. But I've been trying to figure out if what I feel is just gratitude, and I don't think it is anymore. Mwangi's gaze softened further, and he leaned forward slightly, his expression gentle. Amani? I think I'm starting to feel something more, she admitted, her voice trembling. I don't know what it means, but it's there, and I don't know if you feel it too. For a moment, the room was silent. The weight of her words hung in the air between them. Amani's heart raced as she waited for Mwangi to respond. Mwangi reached out and gently took her hand in his. His fingers were warm and reassuring against hers. You have no idea how much you mean to me, Amani, he said softly. I've felt it too, for a while now. I just didn't know how to say it. Amani's breath caught in her throat, and a wave of relief washed over her. She hadn't been imagining it. Mwangi felt the same way. I care about you, Mwangi continued, his voice barely above a whisper. More than I ever thought possible. And I don't want to rush anything, but I want you to know that whatever you're feeling, I'm right there with you. Amani felt tears welling in her eyes, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming relief and joy of knowing that her feelings were returned. I don't know what comes next, she whispered, her voice trembling, but I want you to be part of it. Mwangi smiled and squeezed her hand. We'll figure it out together. They sat there in the fading light, their hands intertwined. It wasn't just about the kindness or the gratitude anymore. Something deeper had taken root between them, something neither of them had anticipated, but both now embraced. As the days passed, Amani's health continued to improve. The doctors were optimistic, and soon they began discussing her release from the hospital. It was a joyous moment, but it also brought a new set of worries. "What happens when I go home?" Amani asked one afternoon as Mwangi sat by her side. "Things are going to change, aren't they?" Mwangi looked at her, his expression calm and reassuring. "Things don't have to change, Amani, not between us. I'm just nervous," Amani admitted. "We've been in this bubble, but once I go home, everything will feel different." Mwangi reached for her hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. "Things are already complicated, but we'll figure it out. You're not alone in this, Amani. I'm here for whatever comes next." A few days later, Amani was discharged from the hospital. Mwangi drove her back to Kijani, the small rural community she called home. As they left the city behind, the landscape shifted from busy streets and tall buildings to open fields and quiet farms. Amani felt a mixture of relief and anxiety. When they arrived at the family home, Mosi and Zawadi were waiting for her on the porch. Tears welled in Zawadi's eyes as she hugged her daughter tightly. Mosi stood by, his face filled with pride and joy. "You're finally home," Zawadi whispered, brushing a tear from her cheek. That evening, after Mosi and Zawadi had gone to bed, Amani sat on the porch, gazing out at the darkened fields. The air was cool, and the stars sparkled brightly in the sky. She heard the creak of the porch door and turned to see Mwangi stepping outside. "Mind if I join you?" he asked. "Not at all," Amani replied, gesturing to the empty seat beside her. They sat in silence for a while, just watching the stars. Amani felt a calm settle over her, but there was still something she needed to say. "I've been thinking a lot about us," she began, her voice soft. Mwangi turned to her, his expression open and attentive. "What about us?" Amani hesitated, then spoke from her heart. "I meant what I said before, about how I feel. Now that I'm home, I just want to make sure we're on the same page." Mwangi took her hand in his voice gentle and sincere. "Amani, I've been sure about this for a long time. I care about you more than I can put into words. We don't have to rush anything, but I don't want to pretend that what we have isn't real." Amani smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her. For the first time in a long while, she felt truly hopeful, not just about her health, but about the future she might share with Mwangi. She realized that the connection they shared was far more than just gratitude or obligation. It was something real, something deep. "I don't want to pretend either," Amani whispered, her voice barely audible in the stillness of the night. Mosi smiled, his hand gently squeezing hers. "Then we don't have to," he said softly. "We'll take things as they come together." Under the star-filled sky, Amani felt a sense of peace wash over her. She didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain: whatever came next, she wouldn't face it alone. The days that followed were filled with a quiet contentment that Amani hadn't experienced in months. Every morning, she woke up feeling just a little stronger, her body slowly healing. And as her strength returned, so did her clarity about what she wanted in life, both for herself and for her relationship with Mwangi. Mwangi had stayed in Kijani, renting a small cottage nearby so he could be close to her and her family. He didn't push her, giving her the space she needed to heal, but he was always there when she needed him. Their days were spent walking through the fields, talking about their hopes, their fears, and their dreams. It was during these moments that Amani realized she was building something with Mwangi, something genuine. At first, Amani had worried that their connection, built during the stress and fear of the hospital, wouldn't last. But as the days turned into weeks, her fears melted away. Mwangi had shown her time and again that he was here for the long haul. He wasn't just passing through, he was committed. One evening, as they sat on a hill overlooking the farm, Amani spoke softly. "I've been thinking about everything." Mwangi turned to her, his eyes reflecting the dim light of the fading sunset. "What about?" "About the farm, about my parents, about us." Amani paused, her gaze lingering on the darkened fields. "For so long, I couldn't imagine a future for myself. The illness took so much from me, but now I feel like I can finally think about the future again, and I want you to be part of it." Mwangi smiled, his eyes full of warmth. "I've wanted that too, Amani, for a long time." Amani smiled, feeling a sense of hope rise within her. "Everything feels so different now. I feel different, stronger, more hopeful. And I know a lot of that is because of you. Wangi gently took her hand, his touch reassuring. You've always been strong, Amani. You didn't need me to see that. But I'm glad if I've been part of your journey. Amani rested her head on Wangi's shoulder, feeling the steady rhythm of his breathing. I don't know what comes next, she admitted, but I know I want to face it with you. Wangi pulled her closer, wrapping his arm around her. We will, one step at a time. As the days passed, Amani's relationship with Wangi grew stronger. They were inseparable, spending nearly every moment together. Even Zawadi, Amani's mother, couldn't hide her delight at seeing her daughter so happy. You know, I think they're good for each other, Zawadi said one evening as she and her husband, Mosi, sat on the porch, watching the sunset behind the hills. Mosi, his arms crossed, glanced over at her. You think so? Zawadi nodded. I do. Amani's been through so much, and there was a time I thought we'd never see her smile again. But now, look at her. She's happy, and I think Wangi has a lot to do with that. Mosi was silent for a moment, watching as Amani and Wangi walked hand in hand across the field. He couldn't deny that his daughter seemed happier than she had in months. Wangi had proven himself time and again, being there for her in ways Mosi couldn't. I suppose you're right, Mosi said, his voice gruff. He's been good to her. Zawadi smiled, patting his knee affectionately. You'll see, Mosi. This is a good thing for Amani. One afternoon, as Amani and Wangi walked through the fields, she suddenly stopped, turning to face him. Her expression was serious. Wangi, there's something I need to say. Wangi's brow furrowed slightly. What is it? Amani took a deep breath, her heart racing. I don't know if I've said this enough, but I'm so grateful for everything you've done for me. You saved my life in more ways than one. Not just in the hospital, but by being there for me every step of the way. Before she could continue, Wangi gently placed a hand on her cheek. Amani, you don't have to thank me. I did it because I care about you, because I love you. Amani stared up at him, her heart pounding. For the first time, she allowed herself to truly feel what had been building inside her. I love you too, she whispered. Wangi smiled softly, pulling her into his arms. They stood there for a long time, wrapped in each other's embrace. Under the open sky of Kijani, Amani knew she had found something she hadn't even realized she was searching for. A future filled with love, hope, and the promise of something more. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Life at Kijani settled into a peaceful rhythm. Amani continued to recover, and the farm ran smoothly under the watchful eyes of her parents. But there was one last bridge to cross, Mosi's full acceptance of Wangi. One evening, after a long day of work, Mosi sat on the porch, his mind heavy with thoughts of Amani and Wangi. Zawadi joined him, sitting quietly beside him. You're thinking about Amani and Wangi, aren't you? She asked gently. Mosi sighed. I trust him, but it's hard. We've been through so much, and it all feels too good to be true. Zawadi smiled softly. Sometimes, life surprises us. Maybe this is just one of those times when everything falls into place. Mosi remained silent, but later that evening he pulled Wangi aside. I've watched you and Amani grow close, and I can see how much you care about her. She means everything to me. I need to know that you're in this for the right reasons. Wangi met Mosi's gaze, his expression sincere. I love her, Mr. Mosi. I want to build a future with her. This isn't about paying back a debt. It's real. Mosi nodded, the last of his doubts finally easing. Then welcome to the family, he said, extending his hand. Wangi smiled and shook it firmly. A future filled with love and hope awaited them all. Wangi looked down, clearly moved by Mosi's words. Thank you, Mosi, he said, his voice steady. Being here with all of you, it feels more like home than anywhere I've ever been. I'm just grateful I could help. The room fell into a comfortable silence, the weight of Mosi's words lingering in the air. Amani glanced at Wangi, her heart swelling with love and gratitude. She knew, without a doubt, that whatever came next, they would face it together. Later that night, Amani and Wangi stood outside, the stars twinkling above them in the vast open sky. The cool night breeze swept through the trees, and the world around them seemed calm, at peace. I think we're going to be okay, Amani said softly, looking up at the stars. Wangi smiled, squeezing her hand gently. Yeah, I think we are. They stood there, hand in hand under the endless sky. The cycle of kindness that had started years ago had come full circle. Now, with Mwangi by her side, Amani felt ready to face whatever the future held. Together, they had found something beautiful, something lasting, a love built on trust, gratitude, and the strength to carry on. If you're still here, it means you're enjoying the story. Go ahead and generously hit that like button and subscribe for more captivating tales like this. We'd love to hear from you. What lessons have you learned from this story? Share your thoughts in the comments below. See you in the next story.